Okay, hello everyone. So today we are here to understand that why should you take law optional, what are its pros and cons, and what are the factors that you must consider right, while taking laws and optional. If you look at the factors, there are three factors for considering law optional, in my opinion. First factor is that when you opt for law, then one thing is very clear, that your writing skill is going to improve a lot. Right? So the first factor which determine law optional, whether you should be taking it or not, is basically your writing skill. Most often, right, when you look at any of the articles which are very nice or very informative in the sense for our UPSC purpose, right? Invariably, they are either lawyers, right? Maybe some jurist, or even though they are researcher, right? Most likely they are likely to have this law degree, right? The reason I am saying this is that law is nothing but it is simply writing things or presenting things in the most simplest manner that you should or you can. So automatically when you study law, your writing skills improves substantially. Now, having said that, the second aspect of taking law as an optional is actually your shorter syllabus. Right. Most often, as a law student or candidate find it very tough to answer the questions which are related to procedural laws. Right? It means they are sometimes unable to even comprehend some of the procedural aspect. Right? The best thing about the law optional is that all those that you have studied in your law graduation syllabus, half of them is not the part of the law syllabus. It means all the CPC, CRPC and evidence is outside the scope of law optional syllabus, right? So that makes it practically half of what you have to study in graduation. Like for example, if you take any other subject, right? Suppose tomorrow you take history or you take geography, whatever the subject you might take, you will see that most of that subject, the syllabus is between graduate and postgraduate level. But in the case of law, the subject is half of that is what you have to study in the graduate level. Okay, right? So there could not be much more shorter syllabus of any optional given subject as the law have. Right? It is such short that very nicely page to page, 2-3 times revision along with writing practice can be covered in 4 to 5 months. Right? Now, obviously, you might argue that there are multiple other subjects like Pali which I can cover in 2 days. So that is something very unique and that I have no expertise in, so I will not comment on that. Right? Pali have a very erratic success ratio. That is actually the third aspect that why you should take law optional. The third aspect is that law optional have a very high success ratio. Very high success ratio. Right? So if you look at the latest 71st UPSC report that came I think 15-20 days earlier, in that also you will see among all the popular optionals, right, law optional have the highest percentage. It means around 20 something percentage of law optional. And that is very consistent. That is the main point I want to argue about, is that when you look at the other optional subject, they also sometimes have good success ratio in certain year, but it suddenly drops, right? It suddenly drops for 2-3 consecutive years. Then it suddenly goes up. But in the case of law optional, it is constantly between 15 to 20%. Right? So that is a very, very big advantage. That even though number of people taking law optional are less, but the success ratio is quite high. Right? The fourth aspect that I will argue with regard to you taking law optional is your overlapping nature of syllabus. Law is perhaps the only optional which have the maximum extent of overlapping. Now you might argue that history is also such optional, geography is also such optional, right? You might argue PSIR is also such optional. But I will again come back and say that law as a subject is such wide that it have implication not only in GS paper 2 but also in GS paper 3 with regard to international economic institutions that we have to study in our paper 1, as well as with regard to intellectual property rights. Getting my point? Okay, right? Similarly, in the case of essay, these days philosophical essays are asked a lot, but if you look at previous 5-6 years paper, you will invariably found that a topic which is connected with law in some sense or other. I'm not saying that it is totally connected with law, but suppose there is a topic, suppose women empowerment for an example, or dowry, something like that, then you will definitely find that there are some legal aspect of it that you have to write invariably in your answer. Getting my point, right? So law optional has the maximum extent. Right? So to sum up, what I can say that there are 3 or 4 factors that makes law a very great option. That is it will improve your writing skill tremendously, there is no doubt about it. It will lead to shorter time for preparation of syllabus, which will leave you to give time to other subjects as well, GS paper, compulsory paper. Similarly, success ratio is very high. If time permits, I will have another video on the success ratio itself, right? Because it is something very remarkable, and the overlap of the syllabus, right? So these are the 4 factors that indicates that law is a very good option, especially for law graduates, right? They should not look anywhere else, right? In fact, last year, UPSC 2020 CSE, a person who was not law graduate, right? Ayush, he got the almost one of the highest marks, I think 278 or 80. Some of them also got, a lot of people also got 287, 280, but it is one of the highest marks that you can say, and he was a non-law graduate. Right? So that is something very remarkable. Okay, so if a non-law graduate can score such a good marks, right? Why can't you? Now, I know some of people argue that it is not a very scoring optional, something like that, but that is actually a fallacy, right? Suppose you get 300 in Pali or in other literature subject, right? But you are not able to score in other GS paper, then what does the 300 will do? Getting the point, okay, right? So law, I can say that you will not, it is very tough to get 280, 290 or 315 law optional, but 300 is very nicely doable, 300, 310, 320, and that is more than sufficient, because that is going to help you in others, writing answers of the other subject as well, not only law, right? So if you look at UPSC very comprehensively, right, that you will find that law optional is the best thing that you can take. Okay, so these are the factors that you should consider. These are the pros mostly, right? Now, if you have any question, obviously you can ask me, right, and I will be definitely replying to it. Okay, thank you.